have, of course, seen the US reciprocal tariffs take effect for India. Now, as we speak, a global trade war continues to unfold. We have seen Asian markets slump in trade. US President Donald Trump also forging ahead with 104% tariffs on China, and China, meanwhile, saying that they will fight to the end. We have Alicia García-Herrero, Chief Economist, Asia Pacific at Natixis, joining us for a special interaction. Thank you for your time. This tariff turmoil the world is witnessing, Alicia, as the reciprocal tariffs come into effect now, what should we expect going forward? A tense, volatile, and disrupted trade environment going forward?
Absolutely. And a lot of disruptions in the supply chain, which we learned from COVID, can be not only a problem for actual supply of goods, but also for inflation. So that's where we're heading for the time being. I am sure that the Trump administration will be busy negotiating deals, and India is probably very high on top of the list. But this might not happen, all of a sudden. So we need to brace for huge volatility.
And of course, Donald Trump forging ahead with 104% tariffs on China, Alicia. What can that mean for the rest of the world?
Yeah. So if you consider that China is the largest producer globally, 30% of global manufacturing capacity, and around 18% of exports globally, much more so for intermediate goods, which are essential, then you know what's going to happen. Disruptions and higher prices on the one hand, meaning those that cannot access Chinese goods, i.e. the US, but at the same time, much lower prices for the others because China will need to place its overcapacity elsewhere. So you have kind of a bifurcated environment on prices. High prices in the US, potentially very low prices in Europe, which is going to absorb a lot of this overcapacity, and in any other country which decides not to impose tariffs on China following the US.
Right, and of course, a volatile environment, a trade environment at that, many saying this can already be termed as an economic and trade war, as it were. How can this translate into geopolitical concerns then going forward?
Well, it's a great question because we're already there, and you're absolutely right. We're going to see much more of that. If you look at China's retaliation beyond the tariffs, there's a lot of, investigations, export controls, let alone the US. I mean, the US has been doing this even before China. So entity list on the US side. So these are PLA, so basically army-related companies in China that are targeted by the US. And then on Chinese side, we have this so-called unreliable list, which is exactly the same thing. US companies that are targeted by the Chinese government. So, it's starting to look really ugly because companies are going to suffer. We saw Hutchinson in Panama. This is going to continue. And it won't only be the US, it will also be China. So watch for Tesla, watch for Apple, and they're just too exposed to China in the current environment.
Absolutely. And of course, we have seen oil prices also tumble to their lowest level seen since 2021. US crude oil trading below $60 a barrel. Your thoughts on what this could mean for oil prices going forward? And will lower oil prices then be India positive?
Yeah. So, yes, I think we will have lower oil prices for a very simple reason. And unless, of course, we have some kind of military aggression somewhere. But barring that kind of hard war somewhere else, oil prices will be lower for a very simple reason. If you look at most investment houses' projections for the US economy, they are heading towards recession. And this is why we have these oil prices now. It's not only about China, it's about the US.
Right. The world integrated, as it were. We've also seen gold prices inch to a record high. Your thoughts, really, when you are talking about recession, then, of course, we have heard projections from Goldman Sachs revised upwards of a 45% recession chance now for the US. Of course, JP Morgan also saying a 60% chance for world recession. So lastly, do we see recession on the cards?
I think it all depends on whether Trump actually, and it's going to happen right away, but maintains these very high tariffs. If these very high tariffs are maintained, yes, we'll have a recession in the US. But let's hope for Trump reacting and his administration reacting quickly and lowering tariffs, perhaps for everybody except China. I don't think tariffs will be lowered for China soon. They might get a deal, but I don't think it's going to be immediate. So there will be pain, but the recession could be averted if other tariffs are coming down, whether it's India, the European Union, big economic areas that are making things worse in terms of having tariffs that they were not expected.
Right, of course, volatile times in the near term. Thank you, Alicia, for decoding this for our viewers. And of course, we will continue to track global markets and the economy going forward.